Hello and welcome back to Post Sports Live. I'm your host, Jonathan Forsythe, and joining me on this glorious spring Tuesday in Washington is LaVar Arrington. Hello. Sporting some nice Easter slacks there.
Yes.
Look
Easter
good, man.
Time. Thank you. Happy Easter to everyone. Happy Easter.
Matt Rennie, sports editor, filling in for Dan Steinberg, who's on the DL today. Thanks, Matt, for filling in as you do. And Jason Reid, Post columnist. How are you today, Jason?
Life is good.
Family have a good weekend over the break?
Yeah. Kids had a great time, over Easter with the grandparents. It was good stuff.
Easter egg hunt. All right, good. Easter bunny come to your house?
Actually, my kids weren't home, so no, the Easter bunny did not come to us.
No kidding. Yeah. All right. This is the part of the show that Dan loves. If he's somewhere watching this, which I'm sure he's not, the small talk part. All right. We got a lot to talk about in the show. Game 2 with the Wizards and Bulls tonight. The Wizards shocked a lot of people. I'm not sure if they shocked a lot of people on this panel, but they shocked a lot of people by their win in Game 1 in Chicago on Sunday. We'll talk about the series and how surprised you guys are that the Wizards were able to take that first game and what that means for the rest of the series as it plays out. We're going to talk about the Nationals and the Bryce Harper benching over the weekend by Matt Williams and whether or not he handled that correctly, pointing out that Harper was benched for not hustling, which I think a lot of us agree is a fair reason to bench, but we'll get your guys' thoughts on that. And then Mike Trout's in town, the first Trout-Harper matchup, even though they don't play against each other per se in baseball. Lots being hyped up around that. I'll get your guys' thoughts on if there's other players in baseball who you'd pay money to see. And then finally, we'll end with the Capitals, and there's been no movement on the management front, and get your guys' thoughts on why Ted Leonsis is taking this time to make a decision with as it regards to Oates and McPhee. But first, Jason, I'll start with you on the Wizards. And how surprised were you by their win in Game 1?
Well, I definitely was surprised, John. Bradley and John did not shoot well.
Right.
And I really thought that with the Bulls, I picked the Bulls to win in 6 in the paper because of their playoff experience. And, when a team that's led by guys who have never been to the playoffs before go to the playoffs, history tells you that there is a learning curve there. But history also tells you if you have a great big man who steps up, that can really kind of help to balance things. And Nene was just outstanding. So while I was surprised that they won, I think the fact that Nene played as well as he did really shows you the potential for this team if this guy can stay on the court. Now, obviously, the problem has been him staying on the court, but he stayed on the court in Game 1, so that's what really was the difference maker for them.
Matt, thoughts from Game 1 for the Wizards?
Yeah, I think what Jason said is correct. You have this weird mix with the Wizards roster of like really young guys, never first playoff experience, and then guys that you're saying are almost too old. Or have trouble staying healthy. But the thing is, once you get to the playoffs, there's no more back-to-backs. You're going to have, after they play Tuesday night, you got 2 days off before they come back to. Well, it's happening the same thing with the Nets too. They're a team that struggled all season, and now they're looking like they could do something because you're not playing those back-to-backs anymore, and so an aging roster is not that big a deal anymore. And then for whatever as debilitating as that injury was, it meant that he wasn't on the court for 5 weeks. Now, he was getting healthy. It's not the same as resting, but the point is he didn't have a lot of wear and tear even on the stretch run of this regular season. So in some ways it could have worked out pretty well for them.
LaVar, Nene had about 35 minutes, I think, on the court. Do you expect him that sort of those minutes to continue through the series, especially if he's playing this way?
It's probably a feel your way through it type of situation as needed. Probably, but I think when you look at the point production, Nene had 24, Ariza had 18, Wall had 16, Gortat 15, Beal 13, Miller 10. I think what we talked about came to fruition in that game, where those names that I read to you, most of those guys are playoff guys other than Beal and Wall. And we said if they were going to have success, it would take those journeymen on this team to show that experience out there on the court. And that's what you saw. So even though Wall didn't have and Beal together didn't have an amazing game shooting the ball, the athleticism and the ability to create space and push the tempo and do those things that John Wall is able to do, it still created the type of spacing to get those guys their shots, to get the type of points, score 100 points in the playoffs. Something was happening that needed to happen. So I think they will play Nene as needed. But obviously having that physical presence with Nene and Gortat down low, it's going to be the difference in this series because I think they had the clear advantage with their point guard and their shooting guard. Question is, can they handle the physicality down low against Chicago's
of the
bigs?
number one defensive team in the NBA?
There you go.
Jason, you mentioned the struggle shooting from the backcourt. Can the Wizards expect to win this series if that continues? Like they were able to get game one, obviously, with great front court play. Are Wall and Beal going to have to shoot better to win this series?
Well, I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you can. I mean, as talented as Nene is, and as much of a warrior as Gortat is, and as great as Ariza has been, you know, Ariza has won a championship, you know, in his career. I just don't know if you can expect those guys to carry enough of a scoring burden if Wall and Beal are not at least being somewhat more efficient. I mean, maybe they can. Again, I mean, I picked the Bulls in 6 because I thought from an experience standpoint and from a defense standpoint, I thought John and Brad would struggle in this series. I mean, Jimmy Butler was chasing Beal all over the court, did a heck of a job there, and I just didn't think that they would be able to do enough offensively, those two in particular, to overcome the Bulls in a 7-game series. So, yeah, long-winded answer, yes, I do think that they have to shoot better. But you know what? I mean, I thought they had to shoot better in game 1, too, and look what happened.
I think you could almost argue that they don't because the Bulls can't score themselves that much. And so I think you can get away with a little bit. I mean, are you saying, yeah, I want our top 2 scorers to go 7 for 25 for the rest of the series? No.
Right.
But
And you can't assume that they will.
right.
7,
I mean,
25.
yeah,
But the Bulls seem to gear up against that to take the backcourt away,
Right.
And then and then the front court obviously stepped up. Now there were a lot of free throws in that game as well,
You
which were a big
cannot
factor.
minimize Ariza's playoff ability.
Right.
You cannot. That man was arguably the MVP on a team with one of the greatest basketball players in Kobe Bryant of all time. He came out and he played lights out basketball for the Lakers when they went on that championship run. He has the ability to be able to do that, and he's shown it all season long. Maybe quietly because of some of those guys, Wall and Beal get all of the accolades, but Ariza has been there all season
They
long.
had a great season.
I would not minimize the fact that he could again be that missing cog, that he could be that piece for this team in the playoffs.
We talked about it all year: Wall, Beal, and Nene, right? But then Ariza and Gortat could be the two most key players. Gortat had 13 rebounds.
Nene was hurt.
Right.
So the one thing you would say is those guys can't shoot that badly if Nene gets in foul trouble.
Right.
That's that was a big
Nene
factor.
gets hurt again.
Right, but I think the schedule, barring a calamitous injury, the
'cause
schedule
you have-
allows him to play long
because
minutes.
because you have time, you have more break time.
I want to ask you, Matt, about the Bulls as an opponent. You mentioned that they don't score a lot, and they're one of the worst shooting teams. In fact, I think they might be the worst shooting team in the NBA from the regular season. But of course, that defense really evens them out, and that's how they've been successful. Why aren't the Bulls that scary of an opponent? And is that part of the reason why the Wizards were able to succeed?
I think that's part of the reason is that you have, that you don't have this team that you're going to have to score with. That I mean, the Wizards are almost the opposite. They can score, they can shoot. They're a good shooting team. They're pretty fun to watch for that reason. But they'll give up some points.
Right.
But against this team, you don't need to play lockdown defense all the time to keep them from scoring. So I think maybe that gives you a little more of a margin for error, at least if everybody's healthy and everybody's out of foul trouble and you're putting you can rotate your best 7 or 8.
Jason, how much, if any, attention do you think the team is paying to that other series? They stole game 1 on the road. Indiana loses at home to Atlanta. There's all of a sudden an opportunity. I know it's early in the series, but do you give are they keeping a little eye by this evening when game 2 will be done in Indiana?
That'd be foolish.
It would be foolish, LaVar?
Look, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No.
I couldn't even
You wanna
hold
take it?
that.
You take
That'd
a
be
crack at that
foolish.
first.
No, go ahead, Jay.
No, go ahead.
I just think that would be foolish. It's your first time in the playoffs in 6 years.
Right.
You have first timers in the playoffs.
It's too early to get excited about that prospect.
You won game 1.
Right.
Let me tell you something. You asked the question, who fears the Bulls? You should fear the Bulls.
Yeah.
Even though they can't score very well offensively like some of the top scoring teams out there, there's a reason why they win. And the reason is their ingredients are to wear your tails out. They will wear you out physically. And to be in a in a playoff series with the likes of Joakim Noah and Carlos Boozer and Taj Gibson, you're going to have to deal with the athleticism and the pure physical nature of those guys and the hustle of Noah and Boozer and their ability to actually shoot short range jumpers as well. They are the difference makers, and you cannot get comfortable thinking that, okay, we got one game against these guys, we should be good. It's a first game.
Right.
Now, if you're telling me game 4 and you got, 2 games in the under the belt and you're in game 4, well, maybe you think about that, but right now, no way. That's foolish.
Jace, you agree with that? It's foolish to look ahead at all and after one game in a 7-game series.
Well, yeah, because they haven't done anything yet. It was nice. They beat the Bulls on their home court in the opener, and that was a great victory for them. But you have to win 4 games to advance. And I've seen in history, like when I covered the NBA, when I covered Sam Cassell was a coach on the Wizards, an assistant on the Wizards. I covered him in the playoffs when he was with the Clippers, and they had a game 1 late in that series in Phoenix, where if they had won that series, they were going to go to the Western Conference Championship, and they lost that game, and then they wound up losing the series. So a lot of things can happen in the playoffs, and you don't want to get ahead of yourself.
All right, well, let's get ahead of ourselves toward Game 3 here in this next segment. I just want bold predictions. Game 3, the first home playoff game, and who knows how long, what's in 5 or 6 years, I guess. We talked about the buzz factor. I got to imagine that the buzz is going to be way up after stealing back home court from this team. So it's a Friday night, so it's a weekend. Everybody will be up and geared up for a playoff basketball. Give me a bold prediction, LaVar, for Game 3 at Verizon.
I think John Wall shows that he has the ability to show up big in moments. I don't think he's shown to us yet that he shows up big consistently, but I would look for a monster game out of John Wall in that game, because he seems to have a knack for timing. And to be a superstar, sometimes it's more about the timing of doing something more so than the consistency of doing something. So I look for John Wall to have a big game.
Big game from John Wall. What do you got, Matt?
I think Joakim Noah gets ejected.
Nice.
I
like that. That's bold.
I think it's going to be a lively crowd. He's an emotional player. Who knows where the series is? There could be some frustration that happens in that game, and
that would bode really well for the Wizards if that happened. All right, give me something there, Jace.
I think Andre Miller is going to have a huge game. I think that he's a guy who you can post him up. He's a wily veteran. He's he knows all the tricks of the trade, and I think he's going to be a huge difference. I think he's going to be a huge factor in the series, and I think coming back here with the excitement and the emotion, I think he's going to have a huge game.
Yeah, he's somebody we haven't really talked much about at all, but was 10 key points in that game on Sunday night in Chicago. I'll give you 20 and 10 from Gortat. I think he's going to be come up big. I'm not saying that the Wizards win the game per se, although I'll add that. What the hell? It's a bold prediction, right? Wizards win Game 3. Gortat 20 and 10. Once again, the front court playing a big role in the victory. Look at that. We beat that by 30 seconds. Let's move on, guys, to the Nationals. And Mr. Reid, I want to ask you, given your baseball acumen and your background and having covered the Dodgers back in the day. You covered baseball? Is that right?
Yeah, in Los Angeles.
What's the saying?
Your
momentum is only as good as the next day started.
You put that in a couple of columns, and people never let you live it down.
All right. So the question is, over the weekend, Matt Williams benched Harper. Harper's spot came up late in the game in a key situation. His replacement, Franzen, did not get the hit. He may or may not have been different if Harper was up. But the point is how he handled it after the game, and that's my question. Do you agree with the way that Matt Williams handled benching Bryce Harper for not running out the pop-up?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about writing about this, but Boz wrote a great column on a hit right ahead. It's a reality check for Harper, and I think Williams handled it exactly the way you need to handle it. The interesting thing about this, if Williams had 5-10 years under his belt as a manager, you'd say, okay, I don't think there'd be any second thought about it. But because he's a first-year manager and he's already done so much, and I did write about this, he's tinkering with the lineup, tinkering with Harper
specifically in that,
And now this move, I think he made the right move. But I was talking with Adam Kilgore, our great beat writer with the Nationals, about this. Matt Williams is either going to be this great long-time manager here, or he's going to burn out quick because these guys are going to get sick of him. So I'm not saying he did anything wrong. I think he handled it the right way, but he's done so much right out the gates in his first job. It's like he's established this is who he is, and it's just going to be curious to see if this can play well over a long
That's a
haul.
good point. I want to come back to that after I get your Matt, your thought on the way it played out on Saturday.
I think the way it played out, I think Jason's right, and I think it was because he's a first-year manager, he had to do that, and then he has to answer questions about it afterward, and you answer them honestly, and I think Harper's enough of a pro now to know that he's not going to feel like he was called out afterward. I mean, he knew what the deal was. People are going to come and ask. It's baseball. You can't hide the fact that the guy was lifted from the game. He's either in the lineup or he's not. And if he leaves in the middle of the game, is he hurt or what's going on? So you got to answer those questions. And I think as a first-year manager, he had to, if that's his message to this team, we're running everything out. You can't have two sets of rules, or you can't let. But to Jason's point, because of all the jacking around in the lineup, I think it gets kind of magnified. In isolation, yes, this is the move that any manager had to do, particularly a first-year manager, to show who's in charge. But when it comes on the heels of all this stuff of, gee, where am I hitting tonight? I don't think it's wrong. It was still the thing he had to do, but it does start to compound after a while, and it's only April.
This could be the narrative. I mean,
this could be something that we look back on at some point. Could be, maybe not. LaVar, do you agree with the way that Williams handled that? And I mean, with the potential sort of him being able to sort of more glaze it over and kind of keep it more in-house, and he sort of works it out with Harper and the team individually.
It's difficult to say whether it was the wise and prudent move or if it was the must move that should have taken place without knowing the relationship between the manager and the player. I think if there's this thing, respect and accountability. If there is no respect, chances are there's really no accountability. And if you made that move in an attempt to make sure that you're holding one of your most bright and famous stars of this team accountable, then you'd have to assume that he's also looking for a level of respect. Mm-hmm. And so by doing that, listen, the whole tinkering with the lineup and different things like that, I think some would say he's probably trying to figure out how to maximize what he has under the circumstances that he's under right now. You're dealing with injuries here and there. You're trying to figure out what's going to work because, quite frankly, we still have to have the conversation that they're not beating the better teams when they have the opportunity to play against them.
Well, they did have the big split against St. Louis, which is important.
Well, it's important, but that whole Atlanta thing still is out there lingering. And I think that he's a first-year guy. He's got to do it the way that he's going to do it. But you have to be careful you don't run into like a Mike Shanahan situation where being a good manager versus being a narcissistic manager overpowers or overshadows what you're trying to get done. I think maybe Oates has even experienced that this season as well, is you got to try to find the balance of what is right for your team, what's right for the guys in particular, singularly, and how those things work. Because if that could be a very big embarrassment to Bryce Harper, and you don't know how guys react to that. We saw how Robert Griffin III reacted to Mike Shanahan not taking accountability over him being put into the game.
Seattle game.
Ultimately, he loses his job. He gets benched for 3 games. It could go either way, and I think that Matt Williams has to be very careful in trying to establish that accountability and that respect factor with his clubhouse.
I mean, I think we'd all agree that relationship is very important, as important as any relationship that Williams has on the team, right? I mean, with any one player. I mean, the team, there's a lot of other issues.
You got to be able to coach a star. Like, there's something to be said about it. Almost like we're in a culture now where you can't coach a star anymore. You got to be able to coach a star.
Exactly, and the team has all said the right things and said, hey, he didn't hustle. He got benched. That's what should have happened.
The other thing too is he's not a star yet.
That's what Boz was pointing out.
Which Boz was absolutely right. And Boz also pointed out in the column that they were told in a closed door meeting, look, the next guy who doesn't run out of, I forget how Boz phrased it, but the next guy who doesn't do this, you're going to be out of there. So there's some stuff going on there.
Let's move on. Speaking of stars, we'll certainly watch that as that plays out. And last night's loss was another tough one. But who's in town now are the Angels and Mike Trout, and a lot of the hype has been made of the first meeting of Harper and Trout and young phenoms, the future of Major League Baseball, and all that. I want to ask you guys this very simple question: What Major League Baseball player would you go out of your way and pay to see play? What individual?
Currently playing in the game?
Jason Reid, yes, sir.
But so not like.
If you have a historical one, too, I'll throw it at me.
Well, I mean, Ken Griffey Jr. When he was, I was covering baseball when he was playing. I covered baseball.
He was covering baseball in L.A.
He covered baseball.
Yeah.
But he was the one guy who, if you're talking about an everyday player, it just came so naturally to him. And interestingly, as an aside, one of the reasons people think his career kind of tailed off at the end was because it all came naturally to him. And he didn't necessarily work as hard as he needed to. He also wasn't on. He also didn't do some of the other things that some other guys did. But Ken Griffey Jr. Can I give you a second player?
Yeah, please.
Randy Johnson. When he would start.
Right on.
Because when the big unit was in that run of Cy Youngs, there was nothing better.
And it was just such an imposing figure on the mound, too. So do you have any current players, though? You give me 2 historical ones.
To pay?
Yeah.
I go to ball games because for what I do.
Well, if you take yourself out of the equation, you play along
honestly,
here, Jason.
Honestly, you know what? There's no one. I've taken my kids to go see games, but just because they like the Nationals, they like the colors of the team.
Yeah.
But to actually pay my hard-earned money that I sweat and toil for.
It isn't not that hard.
No, actually, there really isn't. Now, mind you, I'm not looking at it from an average perspective. Obviously, I covered baseball, and so and so these guys.
All right, you're getting the hook.
But honestly, there's no one.
Nobody currently.
I would pay money to go see. No.
All right, Matt, please give me.
This is not that hard a question.
See what I have to do.
You
with
Darvish, I would pay to see
because
I think it's interesting. A guy who, if you watch his replays, MLB TV or somebody had a really good thing that last year after one of his starts about watching all his arm angles and his release point of the ball with every pitch was exact same point, and then it ended up all over the strike zone, coming in different angles, different curves, different velocities, and watching a guy that can do that, and you really get an appreciation from what hitters are facing in terms of reaction time, in terms of not really having any clue as to what's coming at them, and that's what the best pitchers do. And seeing somebody like that, that's somebody that I would pay to watch play. Now, I would also pay to watch Jason's guys because they'd be a lot younger. So,
LaVar, give me somebody.
Historically speaking, I'm an excitement guy. I loved watching Ricky Williams play. Ricky Henderson.
Yeah, all right.
Big Ricky Henderson fan because I just loved his explosiveness, running the bases and stealing the bases. Currently, I would say 2. I don't know why I have an affinity for Big Papi, but I do like Big Papi.
Big Papi.
I would pay to see him play just to see him.
Yeah. After what he did in the World Series
last year. Just see him come out
there.
And I like Albert Pujols. I think it would be because generally I think baseball is a little boring, but I think that there's some guys that make it fun to watch because you just don't know what's going to happen when they step up. So it'd be those 2 guys.
Certainly Hall of Fame. I was going to say Big Papi, too. I had a batter in Big Papi. I had a pitcher in Clayton Kershaw. And your boy Puig out there in Los Angeles is also just because you don't know what the heck you're going to get from the guy.
But he's a great.
And then just because I'm a homer, I'd go Manny Machado at third base just for his glove. These are all guys currently in the major leagues. These are all current players. That's right. Thank you, Jason.
I get that.
Yes.
I'm
all right, guys. Let's move on to the Caps. And I want to ask. There's been no news beyond the postseason meeting that McPhee had with Leonsis and the team president. And my question is a simple one. LaVar, and I'll start with you on this. Why is Ted waiting to make a move or a decision on the future of the Capitals management, both Oates and McPhee?
I think a wise businessman, they say a wise man ride donkey, right? Don't ride a racehorse, you ride a donkey. Why? Because a donkey is going to go at a pace where it's not too fast. You're going to get to where you're going, but it's not too fast. You're not so much in a hurry where you miss things. Honestly speaking, I have no idea what Ted Leonsis plans to do. And so if you're going to make a decision, one would say wise business strategy is to have a replacement. If you don't have a replacement, then you don't make the fire because you want to be able to hit the ground running when you make that decision. That's first and foremost, whether it be coach or GM. Second way of looking at it is you have to weigh everything out. And do you feel as though you can get to that next step, that next place with these guys you currently have in pocket. And if that's what he feels, I feel like the longer it takes, the more you'd have to assume that there's no decision to be made. It's just business as usual, and that's always a possibility.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I think you want to know what you're going to do next, and there's a comfort level that Ted Leonsis has with George McPhee. He's been the GM here since '98.
Third longest tenure in the NHL, right?
Yeah, and so I think they've been through a lot together in terms of breaking down this team, the Yager experiment, the dismantling of the team to go young and build through the draft and around Ovechkin and Backstrom and Green. They've been doing this together for a long time, so I think there's a comfort level there that before you really want to be sure before you part ways with that. And then I think that the other thing is, if we're going to do it, what do we do next? And does that mean, getting rid of the coach too? Does that mean we're really looking at a major makeover here? And that's a lot to pull the trigger on, because the team has, this year notwithstanding, the team has had a lot of regular season success and just hasn't been able to get over the threshold in the playoffs.
I mean, you could argue, Jason, that we saw this coming from a long way. I was one of the few people who thought the Caps were still going to make the playoffs, so maybe not me, but everybody else saw this coming. This was an average team. They were going to miss the playoffs. Shouldn't this have been part of his thinking before and had a move ready?
Well, my man LaVar is talking about the donkey. I mean, the donkey should have been replaced by a racehorse last year, because you saw this coming down the pike.
Right.
So he at least should have. And now we don't know for a fact that he doesn't have a replacement in mind.
Right.
We don't know that he may have a list of candidates that he's been holding in his pocket for some time. But clearly, the only thing that matters is the only thing that matters to fans is, do you have success in the postseason? I mean, for owners, they want to make their money. They make them a lot of money during the regular season. But for fans, it's like, do you have a chance to win a championship? And
let's add a minute to let Jason finish his point.
And McPhee has not put together a team that has been able to win a championship. That's clear. They have had success in the regular season, but at the end of the day, if you are not a championship caliber team, what is your ultimate end? So, maybe he doesn't want to replace him. Maybe he doesn't have a list of candidates. There are a lot of factors, but the longer this goes on, you're going to create doubt in your fan base about what are you doing, and I think that's the
right. I mean,
concern.
you would think if this is going to be business as usual and he doesn't make a move, that at some point he has to come out and give a vote of confidence or re-sign the man, right?
Maybe McPhee has to give kind of a PowerPoint a keynote presentation of what he plans on doing, and that's why you should keep me. I mean, maybe he's giving Ted Leonsis
for his job.
Everything I know of Ted Leonsis is he's a fair man and he's a sensible man. So maybe it's just one of those situations where he's trying to give him every bit of opportunity to save his job. Maybe it's for Oates and for McPhee.
Another possible, I know this is out of left field possibility, the Wizards are in the playoffs right now. Does that play any factor at all? Shouldn't. No. I know. I just throwing it out there. Out of left field. All right, you're right.
Diversified, handle your business.
That's right. Diversify and handle your business on a donkey. All right, for Jason Reid.
Hey.
Matt,
if you're not riding a donkey, you're not a wise man, just so you know.
All right. I like that.
Wise man.
I was wondering where did you read that?
That's an island phrase. You wouldn't understand that.
Right. I thought it was like a fortune cookie or something. My bad.
Oh, jeez.
It's almost over, right?
Yes, this is over. For Matt Rennie, LaVar Arrington, Jonathan Forsythe, and Jason Reid. We'll see you next Tuesday right here on Post Sports Live. We're all friends here, right?